Hello, good day on day 83 of our 99 days. And today I want to talk about new dynamics in a loving relationship. And to specify that a little bit more, I'm talking about the persons who are in relationship who are on this awakening journey and you're not fully, completely awakened or enlightened yet. So those like me who are still on this path of growing and expanding and learning and trying to deepen ourselves within. And on this path, we also long for a deeper connection in relationships, especially the one with our intimate partner. Or we long for a partner who can fulfill that that desire, or has the same desire, so we can grow together. And so I'm not talking about relationships for those who are completely awakened, because that's more like going into the new paradigm. We're still like in this transition period from being completely unawakened to wakening up, to being awakened but not fully there yet. So that's what I'm talking about. And I have contemplated on this dynamics for a long time, actually, because I'm always curious about the loving relationships and how the dynamics are within, even in the relationship I was in, and I was not so awakened yet. I was already contemplating actually what's happening here, but I was completely not able to change those dynamics as I would be approaching it now. And it still is a very interesting dynamic, as I'm experiencing a lot right now in my current deeply loving relationship. So, and again, like I say, with all my sharings, it's not an ultimate truth. It's an invitation for you to contemplate on, to think about, to reflect, to be curious, to explore. And I'm very open to any feedback or a different point of view or a different perspective on anything I'm sharing here today. And I've prepared this session like I have prepared a few sessions, because there was so much coming up for me in this past week. There was so much getting clear for me all of a sudden what actually was happening. Because for the past 9 months, I was kind of caught up in a dynamic I could not really get my finger on. And it all became clear 2-3 days ago, just before the question was asked in this group. I kind of really got my finger on it. I knew it by mind before, but then I could really feel the difference. I'm like, okay, this is really what's happening. So then I felt ready to share, and then this question came up. So beautiful synchronicity. Thanks for the request by one of you, or actually by two of you. So I hope to get as complete as possible for now, and I'm already aware that I will add 1 or 2 other sessions after this one, which are more specific on male and female energy, because that's also related to this subject, but it gets too long otherwise. Sorry, I have a sore throat a little bit. So I'm using my notes today to keep my story as clear as possible for my sharing. So if we are on a personal journey of opening up and on deepening within and on growing ourselves, we'd like to mirror that back in our relationships, and that might really require a different dynamic, because we expect a lot from our partners, actually. And as long as we're unaware of what we expect from our partners, we get in a different pattern of neediness and frustration and discomfort and And it can really get very intense, because if you're on this path of awakening, at least it is for me, there's no way back. I mean, I just want to deepen everything. And for a partner, this can be very difficult if he or she is not on the same path with you at that same moment. So it's very important to become really conscious about your role in the relationship and what you can expect, or what is still your own responsibility. So I want to go through the aspects I see, like 7 base points that I think are necessary for a loving relationship in this new dynamic. And then I will go through how this plays out actually in a relationship, how this shows up, or where it gets tough actually. So the first point is that new ways of connecting to a partner is feeling this deep connection, and to be really able to connect and see the essence of your partner or of your new partner. So, and with this essence, I mean that you can connect and see and feel connected to actually the soul of your partner. So that what I call always the self with a capital S, or present state, or so where you see your own essence, and where you now are connected to your own essence, like we have been practicing in this 99 days. You actually do want to connect to your partner at that same level. You want to feel. You need to connect at that level, otherwise you get connected to the identity, just the identity, and you can't really see the other person for who he is or who she is. And from now on, I'm only going to talk about he, because that makes my sentences a lot more flowing. But obviously, I also mean with every time I mention he, it's also for a she. So being connected to and seeing the other person for who he is absolute base ground. And if you're in a long-lasting relationship already for many years, then you have felt this essence before when you fell in love. You might not have been aware of it, but that's probably why you fell in love, because there was something that so deeply connected you. But you never were really aware that there was a deeper layer within. And so try to see your partner on this deep level. And of course, if you want to see another person at this deep level, you need to be able to see yourself at this deep level. Otherwise, you don't know really what you're looking for consciously. Unconsciously, you might already see the other person, but it becomes so really helpful to become very conscious about it, because you need it in this dynamic. You need to just get out of a dynamic which gets blocked in frustration and agitation, and then you need to be able to connect at this deeper level. Otherwise, you get into this mode of irritation and frustration. But as soon as you connect to this core essence, then actually you get out of the way, you get out of the frustration of the relationship. And then you can go back into love again and go back into full connection. Because ultimately we want relationships to be fully connected and to be fully experience love as it's meant to be. So number 1 is feel deeply connected at the heart level and see each other's essence. Number 2 is take your responsibility, take ownership for your role in your relationship. So it is about the dynamic where 2 persons are on a path of growing and expansion. And it's so important to take your own responsibility in that, because otherwise you keep projecting onto the other person your neediness and your pains and your and you can, I mean, you can help each other and can be at service there. But it's very important to just become aware and responsible for where you need help. And then ask it proactively instead of trying to get it through neediness. So responsibility is at every level. It's in the practical dynamic, how you create your life together. It's who has what role, and if you have that role, and are you also committed to that role? Like if you're responsible for the income, then how do you deal with that? Or if you're not responsible for income, but you have another responsibility of taking care of the children or the household, or whatever it is, whatever division you've made, take your own responsibility. And take your own responsibility also for growth. I mean, you can use your partner. He can assist you in that growth, but he's not responsible for it. It's your responsibility. You want to grow, and you want to be at service as for his growth. So responsibility is really necessary to get out of projection. Then, of course, there needs to be a base of safety and trust. And that seems like an obvious thing, but trust is so easily broken by many little things. I mean, an innocent lie or not sharing something which might be important to your partner feels very innocent and very irrelevant, but it might break a little piece of trust. So don't take that lightly, because we're vulnerable. We're all vulnerable beings on this path of growth. And when we feel that we are betrayed in a very small way, I don't mean the betrayal like the other person has an affair or your partner has an affair, but even in these small ways, then this foundation of trust is a little bit unstable. So if you feel that that it gets unstable on this level of safety and trust, then open up this conversation. Don't just let it be there and let it be the base ground for being annoyed or irritated or frustrated, but open up like, I don't feel comfortable here. I don't feel very safe enough to share this. Or I don't feel trust when you have this behavior. It makes me insecure. Then just open up on this and don't let it linger somewhere and it will get in between you. Because you'll make a lot of interpretation and assumptions about what's actually happening and on the behavior of your partner. But an interpretation of an assumption is never a truth. It's just your perspective or how you perceive it. And as we know by now, that it can be many different reasons why you perceive it like that. So check if you feel insecure or unsafe in a certain way. Or, just check. Just open up on this at the right moment when you feel that you can be vulnerable and open about it. So there is a requirement also to open as an expansion for growth in general. I mean, I think it's good to be open about that. Like that is a necessity for you, or a curiosity or a drive within you, like this innate willingness and need, but it's a positive thing. It's not a need in a negative way. But there's a desire for growth. And be open with your partner if you have never discussed that it is a desire within you and that you would like to expand. Because if you're not able to grow together or for yourself within this relationship, then that might be the end of the relationship. If there's no room for growth and you're actually blocking the growth of the other partner, then that might be the end of the relationship. But if your partner is not aware that it's so important to you and that he can be of assistance and be at service for you, then you might end a relationship for nothing, because he simply didn't get the chance to to be at service. No, and a very obvious one is obviously vulnerability, and I shared a lot about this before, what vulnerability means. And in a loving relationship, vulnerability is number one. Actually, it should be. If you cannot be vulnerable with your partner, then who can you be vulnerable with? If you can be more vulnerable with other people, then it tells something about the disbalance of your relationship. So try then to find out why you can't be vulnerable with your partner. What is in the dynamic, especially if you are in a longer relationship? What's missing in the dynamic that you don't feel safe to be vulnerable? So vulnerability is directly related to feeling safe. But also, you don't need the other to be vulnerable. You don't need this safe ground to be vulnerable in essence. So it's also actually a way to break through an old dynamic by just showing up vulnerability first. Showing up as a vulnerable person first. So you're actually inviting your partner also to become vulnerable. Because you are in a dynamic here. It's not like you're separate beings. You are related to each other. You are connected. So you interact with each other at many different levels. And if vulnerability is an issue right now for a relationship, then one person starts showing up vulnerable, it's easier for the other person to become vulnerable as well. And it might take a little time. It definitely will take a little time. So be patient there. Not expect immediately like a full openness from day one. But it's a beautiful way to shift into this new dynamic together. Then the next one is, and vulnerability, of course, shows up in many different levels, also in the intimacy, in how you communicate, how you can share yourself, how you can be authentic, how you can be very insecure about things. It shows up in many different ways. And if you can be vulnerable in one area, it doesn't mean you can be vulnerable in all areas. And for this new dynamic, it's needed eventually to become vulnerable in all areas. So you can explore with your partner growth in every area. Otherwise, you hide for yourself certain areas where you can't be vulnerable yet. And then you just tuck it away. And then we know from our journey right now in these 99 days that it will come up anyway. It's a limiting belief within you why you can't be vulnerable. It's a fear underneath it. And relationships are, of course, the perfect way, and in my opinion, the way to deepen those processes together. It's more. Yeah, I think loving relationships are the way to really grow fast and deeply. If you're single, you can still grow, of course, and you can still go through this path of awakening yourself. But it's very beautiful and deeply mirroring for yourself, because you are so closely connected to each other and directly interacting together. Then the next one is an energetic commitment, or a commitment actually in general. So if we have this deep connection and we say a full yes to the relationship, then we are committed to each other. And commitment means being committed at all levels. And it also includes energetic commitment. And what do I mean with that? I think you know what I mean with just being committed. That's just like, what kind of rules do you agree upon? Is it an open relationship, or is it a closed one where monogamy is rule number one? Just be very clear about that commitment, and don't leave it somewhere in the middle where you might want to explore an open relationship if you haven't really committed both for 100% to be going into an open relationship. I'm not going into open relationships right now, by the way. I might share another session on that. But what I mean with the energetic commitment is that if you're committed to the relationship, that means that that it is your highest priority in life, besides taking care of your children and other loved persons around you. You have a commitment for this relationship, and it is your highest priority compared to other relationship with other friends or colleagues or even strangers around you. So an innocent flirt with another person sounds like innocent, like, oh, well, it's just a flirt. And I didn't mean anything and it didn't lead to anything. But energetically, you take some of your energy out of the relationship and you give that energy to another person. And most of the time you do that to feel better yourself. You just feel seen by the other person. And you feel like more beautiful or more masculine or whatever the reason is why you're flirting. And it doesn't have to be, it doesn't even have to be a flirt at a sexual level. It can also just be a flirt by getting attention from other people, even through Facebook or social media. Like you really love and thrive on the fact that you get confirmation through Facebook and it really makes you feel better. You're actually taking that energy of giving so much energy to those outer confirmations. You give that energy, you draw that energy out of your relationship and you give it actually to an outer thing outside your relationship. And it's also the same when you have a disbalance in where you put your energy on a daily basis. If your job is number one, 80 hours a week, and you find it hard to make time for your partner because the job comes always first, then there's an energetic disbalance. You give more energy outside the relationship than inside the relationship. You don't take the relationship as your priority because your job becomes a priority. Whatever you say, like, no, my relationship comes first. But if you don't act upon it and your job becomes first because you think that's how it's meant to be because that's what's required by your boss, then who's more important? Your career, your boss, your job, or your partner? Just be honest there. And the person who's left behind can feel that energetic distraction very deeply and very painfully. So don't take this one lightly because it's very habitual actually, where you put your attention to and that you think it's normal, because we all want to be free, independent persons in our relationships, which is fine in itself. Of course, we are free, independent beings. But you're also committed to something. So how does the commitment relate to where you put your energy on? And it should be in a good balance. And there should always be more energy into a relationship than things outside your relationship. And even with children, if you don't spend enough time together and your children take up all the energy from you as a mother or from you as a father, and you don't have enough energy to spend on your partner, then it's also out of balance. So even children are not an excuse to be exhausted and fully occupied by your children. That should be in balance. So these are the 7 basics. And I think I skipped respect. But respect and responsibility for me comes actually an energetic commitment. Respect is just this generic one, that you're very respectful to your relationship, to yourself, to the commitment, and to everything that's happening. So how does this show up? And how does this play out? And I actually want to start with the don'ts because that might make it more clear. And this is in random order. This is no one specific, it just came up like this. So in old ways, this in old relationship, these are the ones, the don'ts that most of the time were happening, and that's actually where we want to make the change towards a new dynamic. So stop being demanding and forcing your partner to do something differently, to change, or to act differently or behave differently, because that's very tiring. And if you don't like something in the relationship, or you don't like a certain behavior, you can open up the conversation and talk about it. But being demanding, like you should not do that anymore, or I don't like you when you do that, or I don't want you to do this anymore, or please do something about this because you're talking so much about it. So don't give orders to the other person, because most of the time it comes out of projection, because you actually want something to change within you and you're projecting it onto your partner. And sometimes you just don't like a certain behavior, and it's good if it's changing, but then you must find a soft and safe way for your partner also to look at it and get time to look at it. And by demanding and ordering, your partner doesn't get time to look at it, because it will only give a reaction of contraction and withdraw actually from the situation and ignore you, because he doesn't want to be confronted with that. Secondly, stop being the victim. I think that's quite obvious with all my sharings in all these 99 days. There's no place for a victim in a relationship. You're both responsible human beings. You have said a full conscious yes to a relationship. So there's no place for a victim. And obviously, if your partner is abusing you in a way, then obviously that's not a healthy relationship. So then there's no place for a victim, and then there should be made a decision to leave that relationship, or to, if it's really abusive, of course, and if it's only slightly abusive, then you should really be very clear about your boundaries, and it should stop, because we have to respect each other. So abusing in any way, whatever subtle it is, or whatever small form it comes up, is out of the question. It's unacceptable. And playing the victim is unacceptable as well. So you can share your dislike, and you can share your discomfort, and you can share your feelings about it, but not from a victim state, by getting into drama and like, oh, it's always up to you. I can't do anything about this. You're the one to blame here. Because then you get from the victim always is blaming the other person for not taking up on things. But where's your responsibility? So get out of this dynamic of the victim. Refrain from judging each other. And judging is already something that's very unconscious in us. And we do that a lot of time too, as a defense mechanism to judge others, so we don't have to feel it ourselves. And in a relationship, a loving relationship, especially if it lasts for a long time, you easily judge each other. So stop judging, because if your partner feels judged by you, then it won't be vulnerable. He or she cannot be vulnerable. Sorry, because if you are judged, you kind of like contract, and you go within, because it feels very, very uncomfortable to be judged, and it feels very. It makes you feel small when you're judged. And I noticed myself that it comes in quite easily. So just to have this little judgment. And often again here, it's also a mirror effect of something you don't like within yourself, and you're projecting it on your partner. So if you don't like something, then just become curious and ask questions. If your partner is open to change something. Then this is a very important one that I have dealt with a lot, actually, is dropping all forms of neediness. And neediness shows up when you are in actually hiding your pain or your fear, or you're not aware of it. And that, of course, is directly related to feeling not good enough in a certain situation, and or don't feel safe enough. And then you fall back into your old pain, and where we have shared about these 5 flavors. So then you get in this neediness to be seen, or to be heard, or to be loved, or to matter, and you expect from your partner actually to say that to you. And you actually are just poking or pointing or pushing the button as long as you can until your partner says, but I do hear you, or I do love you, or I do see you, and whatever it is actually that is not healed in you, wants to be confirmed by your partner. But obviously this neediness is coming from a lack belief within you. So if you become aware where you show neediness, even the moment you become aware, it's so beautiful that you in that moment you can just release your neediness in the moment. And that, I think, is also literally healing your pain underneath that. What's underneath it and why you show that neediness in the first place. So it's for me becoming aware where I showed neediness, so where I showed up as being needy to my partner, was very insightful to see where I still was not healed myself. So I would take this as the biggest one, actually. If you want to change anything right now in your current relationship, then look for neediness. Look where you show up as a needy person. And if you want to know more about neediness, I have to share more about neediness. I have to do it in another session. And there's also one, I think, on this already shared earlier. Because just to give some idea how neediness shows up, because you are in need of something, you get into irritation, or you get triggered, and that trigger leads to an argument, or to a judgment, or to projection, or whatever it leads to, and then your partner feels attacked by you, and then he or she shows his neediness or is going into defense, and then you actually end up in a very low frequency together, and that's where you then feel stuck. But you were the first one actually to start it, because you were needy of something. And obviously, vice versa, it helps the same way to become aware when your partner shows neediness for something. So if you think like, oh, this behavior is annoying me, but what's actually happening here? And then you can see like, oh, okay, he or she needs a confirmation on something. And then you can help your partner, especially when you're more aware about the flavors of not being good enough. Then you can help that person to just feel seen or feel loved, or what's actually needed there to this confirmation. So you prevent yourself getting into this downward spiral and into this low frequency. So if you feel a neediness, what helped me is just to step back and be patient with myself and also with my partner, because as soon as I was aware what I needed, and I shifted into being patient and just trust that it will be healed in a certain way, or it will be answered by my partner, then it came back in the most unexpected, beautiful way. And not because I asked for it, but somehow it was sensed. And so it was really, really a beautiful experience, and often forgotten after that even. But lately I could really, really see this urge for neediness within me, especially. I must say my partner doesn't show it that much. This is more my theme. But I think it happens in many relationships. Well, a very obvious one is to communicate well. So that's all very related to judging and projecting and blaming. So first tell what you need and where you're coming from and what you feel and how it makes you uncomfortable, and then ask for the other person to react differently. I think this is an obvious one. Recognize the mirror effect is also a beautiful one, which is also directly related to all the ones I already shared, because it's all eventually a mirror. My vision on this. Life is a mirror, and your loving relationship is the most clear mirror you can get, besides that one of your children. But your partner is really showing everything back to you that's out of balance. And it comes back in many, many different ways. It doesn't always come back as a clear mirror. It also comes back as a very subtle self-reflection, but you can hardly see what you have to reflect there yourself. So, but just opening up to seeing the dynamics as a mirror helps already a lot to take responsibility for your role in the relationship and for your path of growth. And then another one that I had to learn over the last months, specifically, more than ever actually, is that we're all vibrations, we're all frequencies. So we vibrate our frequency in that moment. And if you're unaware that something is happening within you, if you're unconscious about some trigger, your partner already has sensed that trigger, because you radiate something that is different. And because you're still unaware that you're triggered or are in a fear or a pain or an insecurity, you change your way of communication, you change your energy, it drops down in frequency. You are unaware of it, but your partner is often more aware of it than you. But what happens then is that your partner is dropping his frequency because he's not aware of it consciously. So unconsciously, he's aware of your lower frequency, but because he's unconscious of it, he reacts to that lower frequency. So without even being aware of a trigger in that moment, you both literally drop in frequency, and then you get into the irritation of the argument or the misunderstanding. And actually, it's a real interesting dynamic, because in my experience, I was first the one who was dropping, and then I could see my partner dropping, and then we end up in a discussion which went very intense most of the time, because it happens so unconsciously. So, and then it kind of gets into this explosion effect, at least in my case. And that's obviously, it shows up in different ways. You can also both drop and then literally disconnect and withdraw. You just go back. You get out of the conversation. So you can get into argument, or you can just get into ignorance and leave it. But the fact that you radiate your frequency and you are aware of that means that you have to become very aware of what happens in the conversation, and where you have to become really aware of where you get triggered, or where there is a neediness and you're not aware of the neediness, and then you get triggered. So it's this very subtlety in the dynamic that makes all the difference, and all the fast way of learning and growing, if you get it right on the spot. And when I say growing and learning, it doesn't mean that you have to talk about everything. Let's make this very clear. I mean, this is not, these new dynamics in relationships, I think, are meant to talk less than even talk more about things that's happening inside. Because you don't have to talk about it by of course, you do share things, and you do expand together, you do explore together. But if you talk about every little detail, every little trigger, every little pain, every little insecurity, that also is also very draining for the relationship and absolutely unnecessary, because you have your own responsibility for your own growth. So don't talk about every little detail. I mean, it's the process of acknowledging it, self-reflect, heal within, or be at service to the other person, whatever is needed there, and get back into this deep connection and see the pure essence of your partner. But don't go into all the little details of things you don't like, or you want to explore, or you want to find out, because it's very tiring as well. And it's also good to just have fun together and do nice things and explore and enjoy beautiful moments. That's also very nourishing. So yes, just to add a little bit to when you are getting into a low state and you feel that, and it's the same what I'm just saying, you don't have to share everything. Noticing that you go into a low state, or that you're triggered, or that you feel vulnerable, is the first step. Sometimes you have to share, like, oh, I'm triggered here, I need a moment. That's already enough. If you make an agreement on that, share that sometimes that's necessary, that you just say, like, okay, when I feel triggered, I just say I'm triggered, and then you can leave it there. So then you have the space to do your own process, because otherwise you expect again from the other to solve your problem. So become very aware of where you drop into your frequency. Yes, and so and then last but not least, I mean, you're both independent, separate human beings, in a sense, in a way that how you are where you are right now, with your background, with your shadows that you have dealt with or not, and with the way you explore things. So you cannot expect the same thing from each other. So what you need might be different from what your partner needs, and both is fine, both is perfect. And it's just finding out by trial and error what works best for both. And sometimes you have to give in, and sometimes your partner has to give in, or give a little space, or do something differently. But it's a dynamic that goes both ways. And that just acknowledge and respect that you're very different in this is very healing as well for a relationship, and very healthy as well for a relationship. So it's a longer session. I had a lot to share, and I hope this really helps. It has helped me tremendously, and I'm very grateful for this learning experience with all my previous partners, but specifically with the last one and my current partner, because in both, obviously, my path of growth has shown up, or has started, and I am very aware that has changed a lot in the dynamic of the relationship with my previous partner. And I'm also aware that it's the base ground for me in my current relationship. But I always trust that you are together for a reason, because if that deep connection is there, then that's already the base ground. So, well, love to receive your feedback, and any questions, always welcome to ask privately or in the group. Okay, thanks. Bye for today.